Welcome back to Gun&ShotTV. This is Chris. Today I'm going to be talking about the Marlin 81. The Marlin 81 was a bolt-action 22 rifle that was made by Marlin. This one actually is just a plain 81. There's nothing after it. So it was made in either 1937 until 1940, and then they changed, and I think it's an 81C or something. They changed the prefix. There's also later on, I think in the mid 40s or maybe early 50s, they started putting date codes on the barrels, so you can date your gun beyond there. But this is actually, like I said, a very early production one, and that it doesn't have a letter after the model number. It does not have a serial number. Prior to 1968, rimfires did not have to have serial numbers. So this actually is a very old one. It also has traditional rifling. Later on, Marlin switched to what they call their micro groove rifling. But this is, like I said, an earlier one with just plain regular rifling. It's a bolt action, like I said. It will feed long, short, or long rifle. It's got an interesting mechanism in the action here, so it can feed all different sizes, and it's got a little plastic or a little metal tab on the top of the barrel, so if the round is cocked up a little bit, it'll jam it back down in and chamber correctly. So this is actually a gun that was my grandfather's. He used it on his farm. He would keep it loaded either by the door or in the barn to shoot rats and small critters that would show up on the farm. It had a 50s Weaver scope on it that was so corroded and gross that you couldn't see anything through it. It was like moldy or something, so I put a cheapo BSA on it. But these are actually, they were cheap at the time. They were very cheap guns, but they're actually, by today's standards, a very decent bolt-action 22. They're very accurate. They're very sturdy and heavy. So if you get one, for $100 or $200, they're really not a bad value. I mean, I do have a Ruger bolt-action 22, the 7722. It's a little bit more refined than this, I'm gonna be honest, and it's got the magazines. But this is actually a very nice, accurate gun. You've got a safety, you've got a plastic trigger guard. You don't really have a lot to this gun. It has an old scope mount here where the scope is actually up, so you can look at the iron sights under if your scope isn't working. With the old scope, that's how I would shoot the rifle, because you couldn't actually use the scope. Take the bolt out, you just pull the trigger, pull the bolt back, now you got your bolt out. You can get in for cleaning, stuff like that. If you want to take it apart further, you can pull out this screw and the action will come out of the stock. But like I said, I think they made these from 37 up until I think the 70s. So they definitely had a long production run. They're great guns. And you have the flexibility of, like I said, firing all the different types of 22 ammo out there. But also, I tend to use this one for shooting things like CB caps or subsonic 22 rounds, where you might have issues cycling in a semi-auto. And something like this, especially with this system for taking all the different size rounds, you can pretty much run absolutely anything through it, and you'll have no problem. So that's another great thing about an older bolt-action design like this. So if you do come across a Model 81, and they had a whole bunch of different models of bolt actions, single shot, stuff like that. So these old guns, you'll see them in pawn shops and stuff like that for 50 or $100 sometimes. Do a little bit of looking online, because sometimes they can be great rifles, and they were cheap at the time, and they're not a Ruger 1022. They're not a necessarily a modern gun, but they'll work with rimfire just fine. They're a great way to learn, the fundamentals of using a bolt-action rifle for cheap. So that's why I love this one. Obviously, it also has a connection to my grandpa, so I'll keep it forever and all that stuff. But other than that, it is a very nice gun. I've shot it. I don't have a sling on it, so it's a little bit harder to shoot accurately without a sling, but I've put out some really good groups just holding this, standing just drilling a target and actually shooting some really good groups with it. It is heavy, so you do get a little bit more stability just from the weight of it. So if you come across one, like I said, a great buy, definitely neat guns. I'll have to make a range video of shooting this guy. But for Gun and Shot TV, this is Chris saying have a rootin' tootin' drunken shooting day. Thanks for watching.